to the second part of my chat with costume designer from Doctor Who, Louise Page. During the first part of our chat, which played during the last Time Space Visualiser, we talked about Louise's introduction to Doctor Who, along with some of the ideas behind David's costume. Trust me, there's lots more to come. Picking up from where we left off, Doctor Who is a programme that has its own unique challenges. No one episode is going to be the same, and each with its own demands and restrictions. Budget must play a part as well, I'm sure, Louise.
It's challenging because it's quick, and there are budget restrictions. There isn't endless money. The budget is per block, so the budget on Doctor Who isn't as big as people think it is. It might be bigger now, but it certainly wasn't then. And for example, we did Daleks in Manhattan or something, and it's a period piece. So, all producers, you have to say to them, you realise if you want 80 crowd in a theatre, it's 80 multiplied by this. And that's before you even start with anything else. It's number crunching. And that does not fit in to this block and what we've got for a budget. So, you've got to find more money in order for us to do this. And obviously, normally they just move money around, so they'll say, okay, well, that next block, we're not having any crowds. So obviously it's going to be lighter for you on crowds. So you won't need to spend as much as you do on this. And so, any show where you've got crowd, you've got suddenly, a lot of money. Even, at the moment, for example, when I'm designing Grantchester and they go, yes, we'll have a ball and we'll have 80 people. And you're like, whoa, that's, do the figures. This is how much it's going to cost. If you have 50, it'll cost you this much. If you have 80, it'll cost you this. But, also you've got the monster aspect. And obviously things are changing now because the monsters, when I started with the sticker acts and things like that, they were sort of, again, the budgets weren't there. So you're like, how are we going to get things? You can't fabricate this whole thing. You're going to have to try and come up with something that's, going to be a halfway measure to work. And then later on, obviously, as you went on, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. The interesting thing is also, again, I know that now it's like with all the toys, the merchandise, everything like that, when I started in series 2, the merchandise was nothing. And then suddenly, people appeared. I think it was actually Brian Mincham who then ended up, years later, producing, but at the time he was in branding, I think, turned up on my truck and said, oh, Louise, can you just look at this? I went, what is it? He said, they're going to make this doll. And we just wanted to check the colours. I said, well, why didn't you ask me? And I would have given you a fabric sample. And so, it was kind of something that developed very slowly when they went, oh, okay, we hadn't really thought about that, It's like, well, if you want me to look at them and check that they're right and check the colours, I can, we can look at them, look at the Pantone colours and check that they're accurate. But, obviously if you don't know any of this stuff's happening, and in those days, there was lots of stuff happening that you just you weren't involved in. Whereas I think now much more, and since Ray Holman has gone back in now in the new series, he's much more involved now because it's a much bigger machine than it was in those days. But budgets are always hard, any designer, I think probably any designer would say, even if they're designing the biggest Hollywood blockbuster, you're going to get some costume designer saying they still haven't got enough money, but by no means did we have lots of money, not as much as I'm sure people think. And the cosplayers, they try and recreate, but obviously they can only recreate as much as the information they have, really.
There are some lovely examples out there where people have really put the heart and soul into making the costume itself as accurate as it possibly can do. So I think it's a lovely testament to the show. Which one would you say is your favourite? Which show was the favourite for you out of all the ones that you did?
God, Oh gosh, well, for different reasons. I suppose I have a few that I like, but the Girl in the Fireplace, I really loved that piece, just because I loved it. I loved the script for that, and everything about it really. I wish now I could have gone back and done it again and had a lot more time and a lot more money to do it. You know, the ball scene in The Girl in the Fireplace, it was all done so quickly. And the Clockwork Women, everything, you know, people think, oh, you have so much time to do it. But I mean, I remember with the Clockwork People, you know, we were making the Clockwork Woman and Clockwork Man, but I didn't really have fittings with them until almost to the day that we were filming. And then, you know, Millennium would bring in this massive contraption and say, this has got to go up someone's sleeve. And you were like, wow. So I think now, you know, on reflection, you go back and go, gosh, you could do so much more, you know, if you had more time and had more knowledge to do that. Funny enough, I turned the TV on the other day and Daleks in Manhattan happened to be on television. And I'd forgotten how much I really loved that episode, you know, the one with Tallulah. And I was like, oh, that looked great. You know, I really loved that episode, actually. And it was great. We recreated the, you know, the Empire State Building, the building of that and all that, and the showgirls. And that was quite fun to do. I mean, I think all different ones for different reasons, probably. You know, I mean, doing the Kylie episode was lovely to do. Again, that was interesting because we had to film that. And I was one of the only people that knew she'd been cast. I had to go and see her in her management company offices and do everything in secret. And she was very busy. You know, it's like everything was done like by email. It was like, okay, Louise, you can come and have 20 minutes with her on this day. And you know, go and take stuff and say, this is what we're making, this is how we're doing it. And she was so lovely. She was so lovely. And, you know, and then I remember I had a Sunday morning, I had a boot maker making these boots for her. And they said, can you come? You know, she was doing a calendar in the East End on a Sunday morning, a photo shoot. I went all the way to the East End and we were going to fit the costume as well. And I got there and she had this makeup all over her. And she said, oh my God, no one told me I was trying the clothes on. I can't try it on. So all you're going to be able to do is try the boots on. We're going to have to, you know, do another fitting tomorrow somewhere else. But that was great, that episode. That was good fun to do, I think. You know, I mean, they all have, for different reasons, I suppose, you know, fondness. But I mean, my monsters, you know, I think the biggest collaboration I had with Millennium was probably the Jadoon. That was my favourite monster, mainly because obviously originally, you know, Millennium only ever did the heads and the hands, possibly, not always. Either they had gloves on or they had to have prosthetic hands. But you know, then it was my job to do the rest. And in that case, it was like, you know, they were talking about having the waist of the Jadoon was up to about 40-inch waist or something. It's like, you know, Neil Gorton is so clever and they have a workshop where they can fabricate stuff in a way that I don't have the time or the money or the, you know, whatever to do that. And so they said, because the head was so huge, you obviously need that torso to be just as big. So they said they could fabricate the top half for me. And then I went to their workshop and then we worked around that to do the bottom half, you know, and I thought they looked great, the Jadoon. You know, I mean, the scarecrows were almost made on them. You know, that was a whole other saga for different reasons. But yeah, all, you know, when you look over time, different things have different sort of meanings. I loved Miss Hartigan's costume. I just liked the end result of that, really. You know, that episode I really liked. That I thought that was a great episode.
Your entire passion for what the work you did on Doctor Who comes through in everything that you've said in the chat that we've had today, because, you know, they were formative years for the new series. They were pioneering years. And, you know, the longevity of it comes from, you know, good acting, but also from good production values, good costumes, good design, and clearly the input that you had into the episodes that you've worked on, I think, have really helped the have helped that longevity, and you've brought originality for sure to the show. And all the costumes and monsters you've talked about today are all ones that I look back fondly on now. It's hard to believe the number of years really since those years of Doctor Who now, isn't it?
It is really. I mean, the other day I was getting stuff together for a website that I was doing, and I was like, gosh, it's so long ago. And, you know, I've got like, you know, a book of Doctor Who stuff, and I've got fabrics, and it's hard because, you know, obviously over the years people have contacted me about, I think there's a group in America that are Rose fans and only collect stuff about Rose. And I used to get a lot. I was astonished at how people were on eBay and all over the place looking for the t-shirt I bought, and I was like, gosh, even when I bought it, I think there were only 3 on the shelf, you know. I mean, and people find this stuff, or they copy, you know, recreate that. There are people that have managed to recreate the Doctor's ties. There's a whole thing about the Doctor's ties. I still get odd messages about the Doctor's ties, and you know, all these things are sort of have become little cult things for different people. There's, I think, another group in America that are obsessed with Alex Kingston's costumes, and always about Silence in the Library, because obviously that, when we did her costume, you know, with song, it was a one-off, you know, thing. And then I've had endless emails for years about this white costume that she had, and people saying, oh my god, Louise, I found this, you know, I found this cardigan after 5 years of looking. And, you know, it's a lot of dedication going on there, which obviously at the time when we did it, you weren't really aware of the fans. It's probably a good thing. You know, I never thought about it because it wasn't an issue then. You know, obviously when I started Doctor Who on series 2, you know, that it was about, I think, Phil Collinson and Russell, it was about fans from years ago and wanting the show to be special for those fans. They weren't, you know, we weren't really thinking about fans, contemporary fans, and people wanting to recreate those costumes. It didn't even enter our heads, actually. Whereas obviously people that came after me are very well aware of the fact that the impact, you know, has on their fan base and whatever, you know. But it wasn't something then, you know, that I thought about. You know, it wasn't really, it was all about just the actors being comfortable and about the producers and the directors getting what they wanted. That's always what we do. If something else comes out of it, you know, then that's just sort of a sideline, you know, of the sort of Doctor Who fandom, I suppose, that you just don't think about. And I mean, obviously, Ray Holman, who designs the costumes for Doctor Who now, is very well aware because he's done so many Doctors in his kind of section since he took over. But it's a much bigger thing, I think. I mean, for me, some of the nicest things were I went to the Gallifrey convention the year that I finished, after I finished. So literally it's like, well, if I'm going to go, the time to go is now when it's fresh, and, you know, I can go, okay, fine, I'll do this. And it was an amazing weekend. And but one of the sweetest things was this girl came running up to me and started crying, and she said, I heard you were coming, and I've come all the way from Atlanta to meet you because your work has inspired me to go to art school because I want to do costume. And I was so touched and so overwhelmed that, you know, she felt that. And I thought, that's an amazing thing. I'm not so sure that it was the right decision for her to do. I have to say, being a costume designer is maybe not the, you know, career for everyone, especially now when we're in lockdown. It could be a very bad idea, you know. But it was really touching, and I was overwhelmed by the amount of fans at Gallifrey that year. That you know, I was very busy, put it that way. I worked very hard on that weekend, meeting, you know, judging. I judged the masquerade for people. And people were coming out to me going, I'm making this, I'm wearing it tomorrow night. And, you know, they were recreating costumes you've designed, and it was extraordinary. And then people that were walking past you all day long that were wearing you know, costumes that you designed and they'd done their version of them, and little children, you know. But even when we were filming, I remember the loveliest thing was, you know, David, we often had fans coming to visit the set. And little boys turning up in their little doctor suits, and that was very sweet. You know, and that was very cute, always very sweet. And you think that's nice. I mean, kids wearing Converse, I have to put that down to David, the Converse. I have to say, you know, that was him going, you know, it was a hot summer, he turned up to his fitting in shorts and Converse, and I was planning on putting him in quite sturdy boots, the lace up period looking boots, because the art department had said to me that the TARDIS, you know, had to have ground that was you know, you couldn't be able to slip, and, you know, it was metal and there were quite a lot of holes, so he needed something sturdy on his feet. And I said to David, well, the art department have said you need something sturdy here on your feet. And he went, oh, I think I should wear these Converse. No, this is what I want to wear. This will be great. And I was like, David, I'm not being funny, but you do realise if you do this, that when we get to the snow and winter and everywhere else, you're still going to have to wear that. He went, no, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. You know, we ended up putting about 3 pairs of socks underneath those Converse in winter, you know, and at some stage I think I even brought out the wet socks as well, you know, kind of like sealskin socks, because you can imagine how freezing it'd be in Plimsolls in the middle of winter, really. But
well, it was certainly an iconic touch to his. I could talk to you for hours and hours, but time has defeated us a little. As soon as we're back in the real world, we'd love to have you along to one of our events, and
that'd be a pleasure
to continue that conversation in front of hopefully an audience of fans at that time. It's been a real pleasure to chat to you today, Louise. Thanks very much for giving up your time for us. Look after yourself, stay safe, and hopefully see you soon.
And you, thank you. Stay safe, and safe to all your fans as well that are going to see this. I hope everybody's well. Thank you.